What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and this is episode 115 as we cover and continue our coverage, of the championship meet over at Gulfstream Park for January 18th, and we're covering the late pick six with two more Sunshine Stakes to boot. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. I greatly appreciate it. Of course, you see scrolling on the bottom side of the screen right now. Please go down below the video player, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content on the channel, as it's 100% completely free to do. And it is the best way to help out our channel, as it shows us that you guys are enjoying the content. Also, below, please comment below the video player your best bet of this Gulfstream Park sequence. Would love to read your comments. Of course, would interact with you guys as well. So please put your best bet of the sequence below, and I will. All right, and you'd have to do that obviously after the show goes up, so the comment box is available. If you're already watching this as a replay, then you're all good. So greatly appreciate it. Hopefully I see you guys in the comment section below, as you see scrolling on the bottom screen now. Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have our Horsin Around show. It's not every single Monday, but intermittent Mondays. As this last Monday, we had one on the Eclipse Awards. It was a fantastic listen. Hopefully you guys have watched it already. If you guys have not, please go tune in after this show. Like I said, it's a very good listen about all the Eclipse Awards, including the Horse of the Year. Last night was Pacific Horseplayers with Noah and Ryan. This week they covered Santa Anita and the undercard stakes of Fairgrounds. Fantastic late pick 5 day. Of course, Wednesday is right here at with Bettin N Boozin, and Thursday tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is Picks and Ponies with Howard, Pete, and Paul. And as Pacific Horseplayers covered the undercard stakes, they are working on Fairgrounds, and we'll have that late pick 5 for you guys tomorrow. So hopefully you guys will be joining in to watch with us all. Of course, a couple more administrative items before we get started. Every single podcast posted here to the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel is also available in audio form. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor is where you will find those. So please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. If you are listening more on audio, such as going on your way to school, on your way to the gym, or in the gym, something like that, and you want to listen to audio form, we got you covered. Again, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor for those. Over at Bettin N Boozin Podcast on Instagram and TikTok, I've posting more short form content over there, and it's going to start. The race previews are going to start this weekend. So please go over there and give us a follow over on TikTok and Instagram. And not only that, guys, please go subscribe to our HHH Racing Podcast Power Picks. If you guys were not part of the Power Picks last weekend, you guys missed out for sure. Last weekend, Howard hit both of his plays of the day, both at Gulfstream Park and at Tampa Bay Downs as well. I can show you guys a little bit of what you guys were missing, as it was posted on X. You can see it right here. Little Jamie at 9-2 odds came home to win at 9-2 in race 7 last weekend at Saturday. Again, play of the day at Tampa at 5 stars. Then you go over to Gulfstream Park, and Lightning Tones was a morning line 12-1 horse. Ended up going off, I believe, at 5-1, and it saved my day due to the HHH Racing Podcast Power Picks. Because if you follow me on Twitter, if not, please go follow me on X at AP Roscoe K. I post all my plays before I do them on any given Saturday. I did not have Lightning Tones in there, but decided to play him because he was in the play of the day on the Power Picks, and ended up cashing a very nice 21-1 double with my most likely winner of the day, as I stated last week on the podcast, in the last race, number 3 in Nantasket Beach. So you guys are missing out if you guys aren't subscribed. It's $21.60 a month, which is how Patreon bills it. Only comes out to just under $5 a weekend for 2 full tracks of price plays like Lightning Tones and a Little Jamie, spot plays, pick 5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. We got you covered. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. The link is also in the description below. And just like I showed you, but if you want to see more of those, you can go to hhhracingpodcast.com to see previous editions of those Power Picks, or to learn more about the podcast, you can also go to hhhracingpodcast.com for that. But guys, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it here, as I have the only guy we need when we're covering Gulfstream Park. But of course, Patrick has work, so unfortunately, we're going to miss him tonight. But Mr. South Beaches himself is here before he heads off to the national championship, which I believe is this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Right? It's I think it's Monday, if I'm not mistaken. But let's bring him on right now from the Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Charlie, what's going on, my friend?
Not much. Yeah, no, it's this Monday. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day that day. I will be missing my classes on Tuesday unless they cancel them, but it's worth it. And yeah, I couldn't be. Don't get me wrong. Gulfstream is my favorite track in the world, and I'm excited we're covering that. But it's probably the second thing I'm most excited for that's coming up this weekend behind the national championship.
Well, at least you get to, like you said, I don't know if you disclose or not, but you won a student lottery to go, which is even cooler. So obviously one of just a couple hundred students out of the many thousands that go to Ohio State. That's a pretty cool thing, let alone your team playing in the national championship. And for me personally, it's literally the worst case scenario in
I wanted
national championship.
Because I wanted you to have to be the moderator because obviously he's a big Notre Dame guy. But we'll have to save that for the group chat. But yeah, no. And to be honest with you, as loyal of a fan as I am, I've been looking, and like tickets are like $2,000 as like the cheapest seats otherwise. So yeah, definitely very lucky and thankful that I won that raffle, because otherwise I don't think my parents would be encouraging me to shell out $2,000 plus other stuff just to get to go.
Well, no kidding. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
But yeah, no, it should be a great game. Obviously, like Charlie said, on Monday on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So obviously, I'm not going to say it, but hope Ohio State plays Notre Dame. I hope neither win. So that's the way.
Play two teams Michigan hates.
So I'm not even going to say good luck, anything. No, screw all you guys. No one cares. Either way, guys, let's get right into it. Katie, of course, was here bright and early. Katie, thanks for joining the show. Ray Cromley is here. Thanks so much. Terry Frank is here, of course. Hello to you as well. And Howard, of course, is here. And he said, hope you all cash in the plays of the day. As I went over, I took the words out of his mouth. So, like I said, Terry Frank says the power picks have already paid for itself 5 times over. The 9 at Gulfstream saved my day too, just like it did for me. So, guys, again, you're missing out. Very cheap. And this one was 7 pages of information last week, because you do get Santa Anita as well, since they're now a fantastic partner of the podcast. So 3 tracks, realistically speaking, unless Santa Anita, of course, has a gigantic day, which it covers in one of the 2 tracks of the Power Picks, guys. So you are missing out on Mike Carmoli. Mike, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Charlie, let's get right into it, my friends. We have 6 races to cover on today's card, because as we've all documented on this show, Gulfstream Park likes to hate me, and they put the stakes race, one of the stakes races, outside the late pick 5. At least it's the race right before the late pick 5, so we can say that we're covering the late pick 6 instead. And it starts off with actually
turf pick 3.
It is true. It does cover the full turf pick 3 as well. I was actually going to put the good memory, because I was actually going to put that on the thumbnail, but gotta have some room for all the stuff in the thumbnail. But yeah, it starts off with a very competitive race, as well as it starts off with the Sunshine Turf Stakes. Oh, and I forgot to mention, of course, how could I miss Felipe Jr.? How you doing, Felipe? Thanks so much for doing the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. He said this podcast are a great watch, and as a team, you're on fire. Word is spreading. Checking in from Northern California. Felipe, thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it, as always. And of course, my mother is here. Sherry, I guess, but Mom, thanks so much for doing the show. I greatly appreciate the support, guys. Let's move into it. Race number 6, Sunshine Turf Stakes, as I mentioned, going a mile on the 16th on the turf for Florida breds, 4-year-old and up, as I bring up the Equibase right now. And as we're covering Gulfstream on a Wednesday, everybody, this is Bettin N Boozin. This is the spiel at this point. If you guys have not been here, we don't have morning lines, and we unfortunately do not have numbers in the program, as we are covering Saturday's card on Wednesday, and they will not finalize the card with morning lines until Thursday, which is, of course, tomorrow at time of live streaming. So, Charlie, of course, as always, please mention the horse's name and their number as we talk about these races. As I mentioned, Sunshine Turf Stakes, the morning line favorite will most likely be the number 9, Boppy O for Edwin Gonzalez and Mark Cassidy, an old rival of Crownsway's great Otago. Ended up beating him in the sophomore turf stakes at Tampa Bay a couple years ago. But Boppy O will be your morning line favorite. And there's a couple other in here that will take some money as well. But I'll bring up the picks that we have for this race. Charlie, you are going with Boppy O. I'm going a little bit off the wall. I'm going with the number 2, Adios Cole. But Charlie, I'll let you talk about first. Look, Boppy O is definitely the horse to beat. And on numbers alone, he's definitely above a lot of horses in this field.
Yeah, and I think the other big part for me, as you were kind of hinting at, is if you look at who Boppy O has ran against in the past compared to others in this field, it's really not even close. I mean, as you mentioned, Otago has raced against Major Dude. Saratoga Flash ran really nicely in that race at Gulfstream 3-back. When I was at Gulfstream, actually, with Howard, saw this horse ran a really nice second against Jerry the Nipper, who was huge that day. You know, ran against Yamato, Degree Race. It's just run against Forever Supper. It's just run against so many previous winners, Irish Aces. I mean, you could go on forever. And, you know, for a 5-year-old, is still actually, you know, maintaining that strong form and even putting up kind of buyer tops or near buyer top numbers. I know this one is 0 for 6 at Gulfstream, but, you know, is in the money 4 out of 6 times and has been right there. And again, running against much stronger. You see all the stakes races Boppy O's coming out of. I know that, you know, last 2, they did switch to the Tapeta. I also thought pace-wise, it was a little tough for Boppy O to work with this. He's one that needs a little bit of a setup and, you know, set off pretty reasonable fractions, but has numbers on the Gulfstream turf that certainly fit here. And as you touched on, is certainly the class of this race.
Yeah, you pointed out, I don't have him on top. This horse has never really been one to like to win. I mean, like you said, he's faced, I mean, you could go even farther back, right? Of course, you have Otago down there in the sophomore turf. But you have, I mean, Swan Lake, Farbridge, Super Blessing, Forever Super, Saratoga Flash. I mean, you can go through. This is definitely the running lines that you're looking for in this race. However, Boppy O's just one that doesn't like to get home in his nose in front on the wire. Obviously, he's ahead of this field based on class rating, but like I said, he's just never been one to like to win. And he's probably going to be, you know, something to 5 come post time. And I want to look for somewhere else to a horse that maybe has a little more upside than what Boppy O might have at a much, much lower price. But again, have to completely respect him, as based on numbers, he does fit there. Absolutely. But I went with the number 2, Adios Cole. And while he's a little bit lighter on numbers, that last race, Charlie, was very good from him, even though he actually got DQ'd in that race. But he did cross the line first, just hurt it a little bit towards the top of the stretch and drifted in. But I like the turn of foot that Adios Cole has. Adios Cole is the number 9 in this race. You'll see, actually, that's the time he came over right there. But I don't know. It wasn't, I mean, Adios Cole you're right here in the teal cap outside. The one thing that Tampa Bay, I think, does great is they have the caps based on the saddlecloth number. This is where he gets DQ'd. You can see he closes the door a little bit on the 7. But he goes on with it, and he actually runs a very, very nice race. They did go pretty fast early, so did get a little bit of help there. But they should be going at least decent in this race. It doesn't look like a necessarily slow pace to me. But the turn of foot that Adios Cole has definitely puts him up there for me. And one that's only 4 years old and only entering his 4-year-old year. 7 for 9 total in the money, and could just be steadily improving, getting good at the right time. Plus, gets Tyler Gaffalione aboard, which is always a jockey upgrade, no matter who you're coming from, unless it's one of the top, 3 jockeys in the U.S. right now. Adios Cole is one I'm looking to take another step forward as I show the time for him here. You can see they do have it denoted as a fast pace. The number 4, Prevent, who is ahead by 13 lengths in that 2-mile race, is going to be up there. Victory Achieved, who's actually a horse that we don't have anywhere, that I was actually interested in. However, it's just a matter of the quick pace. He did survive but on the synthetic, going 6.5. This is obviously a little bit of a different beast, going a mile on the 16th, but going sprinting to routing, he will also be up there as well. So looks to be a decent pace, obviously also for Boppy O to run into as well. But I think Adios Cole, if he takes another step forward off that last race at Tampa Bay, also in open company, now coming to Florida breds for the first time since early May of last year when he was in the Herman Walensky barn, now with his son, Sam, if I'm not mistaken. So again, looking for Adios Cole to take another step forward and should be at a pretty decent price on that one. Charlie, you're going with the number 2, Adios Cole as well in third, but you have the number 8, Anamest. So you're gonna have to say no. It's Anamnestic. I can't. It's one of freaking Kelsey's horses in the MBS stable. I know how to say this horse's name. Oh my gosh, Anamnestic is how you say the horse's name. Again, Kelsey Danner, NBS stable, of course, fantastic friends of us at Crowns Way Racing. This is a horse I actually had in third, ended up switching out when I went back to look at it. One that always gives his run. He's 5 now, but maybe just never really necessarily good enough and is a little bit light on numbers, but definitely could clunk up for something in the money here.
Yeah, but honestly ran a really nice effort 2 back at Gulfstream on this, on this turf course. Has really consistent numbers. I completely agree with you in the aspect that this one, hasn't quite faced the competition of some of these others and doesn't really have that, big number that sticks out. I mean, I guess there's the 2 on the synthetic, but that's not really what you want to see. You want to see them on the turf. That being said, ran in one of those nice handicap races at Gulfstream last time out on the Tapeta against a pretty nice field. And is another one who I just think trip-wise could trip out here and finish somewhere nice. And like you touched on, I think my big concern here is you could argue there's some similarities in the concerns you had with Bapio. I just think my concern with this one would be the competition difference, is I think Bapio has excuses that this one doesn't. That being said, has still finished in the money almost half the time in 24 starts, and is one, like you mentioned, that always does run a solid effort. And I think you'll get a very square price on this horse compared to, actually, it was part of the reason I originally almost put your 1 in third, funny enough, but I just thought with the IRAD tax that I hadn't seen enough for the price that you'll probably get. I think the 8 has a little more value based off of what the horse has actually done. I think if IRAD was on this one and Johnny V was the other way around, this one would be a much lower price. And I just think the pace and figures certainly fit enough for this one to at least finish somewhere in the money.
Yeah, and look, obviously, you guys know, again, I'm not biased towards Kelsey, but I think she's really great and finally getting the recognition she deserves. NBS Stable is her number 1 owner. Johnny V actually doesn't hop on for Kelsey a lot, so it's actually a really interesting move to have Johnny V aboard in this race. This one should also be in front of horses like Bapio and others. Maybe get a jump and maybe get past late in the lane, but either way, this one could be in the money for sure. And as I said, I had him in there originally. Ninja Star for Kevin Rice is the one I threw in third. Those last 2 races at Tampa Bay were actually pretty good. I mean, you could see in the last race denoted by the blue figures early, they went pretty slow for that mile, which it's pretty, not really that slow. It's about what they went the last time he won as well. I do agree with you, Charlie. I think you're going to get a lower price due to the IRAD tax aboard here, but gets the rail, should get, a pocket type trip, get the jump on horses like Bapio. And I feel like if you don't include this one, if you're playing horizontals, you might be risking IRAD getting the jump on you if you're just relying on horses like the 2 and on Bapio. However, I think they're better horses. Just a matter of this one could just really get a really nice trip somewhere towards the pocket and out finish them to the wire. But I completely agree. I completely understand what you're saying, Charlie. I think this one will be a lower price probably than what he deserves in this race. Only other horse I want to talk about, I already talked about the 5, was Lord Eddard Stark. That last race in the H. Allen Jerkins was actually really good. However, that one was at 2 miles, and he was actually 60-1, beating Utah Beach, who was a pretty heavy favorite after the Gray Wizard scratched in that race, which was covered on this podcast, of course, as longtime viewers would know. He's run well at a mile and a 16th before, but I just think this might be a little bit over his head. However, this is against Florida bred company, and he does run well at Gulfstream Park, which is definitely something to keep in mind. And Joseph Orseno has had a very good meet. So Lord Eddard Stark might be another decent price again to maybe throw in there as kind of not really a flyer, because obviously he's run very good races. Just a matter of, can he take back to that mile in the 16th and beat horses like Bapio, for example. But completely plausible, and there's many different ways you can go in this race. So it's a tough start to the pick 6. I'm going 2-9-1. Charlie's going 9-8. 2. Mark Bogas. Mark, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. If you guys are watching and you guys want to comment in the live chat, again, it's on the right side of the video player, both on YouTube and on X. Of course, we read every single one. So please comment in the live chat, whether your picks or you have a question, whatever you guys want, please put it in the live chat. Greatly appreciate it. Charlie, let's move on to race number 7. This is actually a pretty nice maiden special weight in this race, going 7 furlongs on the dirt, draws a field of 7. The morning line favorite is most likely again going to be the number 1, Wistucky for Junior Alvarado and Dale Romans. Sneak preview is should take a little bit amount of money in this race. Tyne Bar, the New York bred, again, even though there's 7 horses in this field, it's actually a very competitive maiden special weight. And I'll put on the picks right now. Charlie, you're going with the number 1, Wistucky. I'm actually going with the number 7, Sneak Preview, the Florida bred. I have many reasons why I like that horse, but Charlie, of course, I'll let you go first. Wistucky, obviously, numbers alone, a lot of stuff to like. Just one that hasn't necessarily got the job done in the 7 starts this horse has had.
Yeah, to be honest, I fully expect Wistucky to be the favorite and a heavy one. I would guess this horse is no longer than 7-5, to be honest with you. I think others in this field, obviously, some of them, like you'll touch on what your 7 and the horse, even though I don't like the horse, but the horse that Irad is on, have obviously had less goes at it. That being said, Wistucky's run against some really nice horses. I mean, you go through the whole field, Track Phantom, Conquest Warrior, Top Connor, Military Road has just run against much better than this field and has tried different distances and, has buyers that certainly fit in pretty much every effort aside from, obviously the debut in that 57 and just hasn't quite gotten it done. For me, what I just like, obviously, I think the effort 2-back was a little disappointing in that he was able to get to the lead and, pretty reasonable fractions could have got it done. That being said, that was first off a really long layoff. And then the next time after that, I thought honestly ran a pretty decent effort. Just kind of fell into the issue of being second best. And I know Into Pleasure was one who I originally wasn't on, but actually the workout report said was going well and took a lot of money and ended up running huge. So I think Wistucky here, though, completely fits as obviously the class of this field. I also think could honestly be the speed of this field, and especially from the rail, will probably have to send. I think the question is just, is there someone in this field that can make this one work hard enough? Because I think, and actually Terry just commented what I was going to hint at, I would argue that first race, if you're playing the pick 6, and even if you're playing the pick 5, not this race, but the next race we're going to cover, in my opinion, is the hardest race of the entire sequence. So if you're looking for a way to cut costs, I certainly think this one could be a single.
Yeah, I mean, look, numbers alone makes a ton of sense. Just this horse has had so many chances. I mean, that race 2-back at Churchill in the restricted race, there's not a chance this horse should have lost that race and just ended up hanging really and getting completely passed by a horse on the outside. I'm not saying Anthnonian is a bad horse. Obviously ran an 85 that day, but that horse had every single chance to win. And really, even though this one was a pretty quick pace at Gulfstream, this horse still had every chance to win. It's just one I'm not willing to take, especially at a horse at such low odds. On the rail going 7, again, another thing I don't like. Again, it's only a field of 7, which makes it a little bit better. But man, I can't get behind a horse that's going to be something to 5 and is a horse that just does not like to get the job done. I went with the number 7 Sneak Preview for a little bit, for many reasons, realistically. Again, obviously you could see lower on buyer speed figures, only a 72 in his last race. However, that was off of a 9-month layoff. First race in the D'Angelo barn, didn't run that well, was actually favored in that race. And just ended up not being there. However, gets gelded for the ultimate equipment change for the first time. Gets Gaff Leone now aboard. This horse is working super fast at Palm Meadows. This horse sold for $350,000 by Arrowgate. More distance should be his friend. Look at the Quaisans PPs. I mean, this horse was super good as a filly and a mare in 2017, 2018. Third in the Gallant Bloom, second in the Iroquois. Third in the Vanguard, second in the Gallant Bloom again, back-to-back years. I mean, this horse has every single thing going for it. It's just a matter of can this horse put it together. Again, more distance should be the friend. Gets gelded. Second time off of the long layoff. Even got a little bit of a break in between the last race and now. And Gaff Leone hops aboard for Gold Square Racing, which, of course, for in my time. Obviously, Cyberknife comes to mind with that type of ownership. So I feel like this is just this horse's time to go. And the 6 horse, to your point, Charlie, I think this horse has to go. This horse is really only gone. It's a matter of if he's fast enough as the 1 with Stuckey. But if he goes and the 7 sits right behind, they work each other out. Gaff Leone just gets a super easy trip for a horse that probably should be a lot better than what he's shown. I'm willing to take that chance at probably 5-2 or 3-1. Again, over a horse that's over 7 and has had every right to get the job done at 6-5. I'm much more willing to take the number 7 sneak preview. Obviously, you like this horse as well, so feel free to say anything that you want. You also have the 6, but real quick, Charlie, let me talk about the 2 real quick. Proton Spirit. This horse has been running on turf for Melanie Giddings, and I'm glad that Melanie's getting a little more horses because obviously the trainer of Caravel with that trainership and ownership, as well as of course the late Maple Leaf Mel, of course, but the dam's behavioral finance has had really nice runners on the dirt, even though this horse has really only ran on the turf. You know, these buyers in the mid 80s for Gojo Wan, who this horse is a half to. I mean, granted, running on the West Coast, but winner in the Shared Belief listed stakes out there, 4th in the Twilight Derby, 4th in the Native Divers. So this horse has pedigree that could suggest this horse could take to the dirt and is obviously working like it as well. Sean Bridgman drops aboard, who has been riding for Melanie Giddings. So Proton Spirit's one I don't necessarily would completely look over. However, might be a little bit more of a long shot to maybe throw underneath in your exactas and trifectas. Charlie, I'll let you finish off. Again, sneak preview and fire and 5 eyes on Sky Stars. What'd you like most? You can feel free to piggyback off me on sneak preview and go into the 6.
Yeah, so I mean, with the 7, it was kind of what you were already talking about. Gets the equipment changed, second time out for D'Angelo. Took a lot of money, so people clearly thought this one was legit. Ultimately, just the horse that was on the lead kind of got loose with very, reasonable fractions, and there was just no way to catch up. But for me, which I'm sure you saw as well, is working huge. Gets Tyler G aboard, who for me is, again, my favorite jockey. And at Gulfstream, if I could have any jockey, I honestly think I'd take him. And looks to have, I would argue, even though I think the 1's the horse to beat, more upside than any other horse in this field. And then I just think the 6 is ultra consistent. Obviously hasn't gotten it done, but just continuously puts up 70 buyers, which obviously is nothing to get, super excited about, but I think is certainly enough to finish in the money. And I think with those connections and with the horse being over 7, you'll certainly get enough of a price. And then quickly on the IRAD horse, I don't know if you want to speak on it. For me personally, I just wasn't moved because I'm sure that's the other one that will take money because people see it's IRAD. For me, it's just the workout report wasn't anything that got me super excited. And then the other issue is just it's obviously a huge layoff. So for me, this is one where I would need to see one. And if this one just freaks, then I lose.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I kind of feel as well. Source has just done absolutely nothing off of the training from Bill Mott. Kelly Breen's more than capable, of course, but off from Bill Mott. Coming here, IRAD rides for Kelly Breen a lot, so that doesn't necessarily mean too much to me. This horse would have to really turn it around to be able to compete in a race like this, and if he does, tip my cap and move on, because that's definitely not one I'm going to have in my ticket to, it's probably going to be 3rd or 4th choice in a field of 7. I'm going 7-1-2. Charlie's going 1-7-6 in race number 7 at Gulfstream Park. Terry Frank says single number 1, as you mentioned as well. Paul Collins says there used to be a day where betting against Dale Romans was a death sentence. Not anymore. Again, not in my time, but I know that he's had, you can go down the list. Kit's Joy was Dale Romans, stuff like that. And probably, Felipe, to your thing, probably either wasn't Keen Ice Dale Romans? I feel like Keen Ice was Dale Romans trained, if I'm not mistaken correctly, who obviously beat American Pharaoh in 2015 in that race. I actually have it off to I'm going to pull it up to my side here real quick. And Little Mike also made $3.5 million running very well in about 2014 to 2013. So those are your 2 horses to answer your question, Felipe, whose questions, what was Dale Roman's top horse in the last 15 years? So one of those 2 for sure. Charlie, let's move on to race number 8 as I bring up the Equibase right now. And this race is extremely tough. I completely agree with you. It's the hardest race in the sequence. Allowance optional 62.5 going a mile on the turf. Field of 12 with 4 also eligibles. And the also eligibles, guys, if they get in, you definitely need to pay attention to those horses. I'll give a quick rundown of those after we cover this race. But as you can see right now, morning line favorite. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of ways you can go. Maybe the number 11, Viva Viv for Tyler Gaffleone and Jack Sisterson. And there's, I mean, like I said, there's a ton, or Life's an Audibles also in here for Johnny Velasquez on the rail and Todd Pletcher and Rapoli bringing up. You actually are going with Life's an Audible. I don't have her anywhere in this race. I'm going with number 6, Zizit. I'm pretty sure it's how you say that, for Junior Alvarado and Marty Drexler, who's had a fantastic start to this Gulfstream Championship meet. I believe it's 5 for 11, if I'm not mistaken. So, Charlie, I'll let you talk first. Look, she's been very, very good in the past. She had another break after the Here Comes the Bride, ran in the Tropical Park Oaks, ran nowhere, but it's no question that this is an easier spot.
Yeah, and if you're wondering how wide open I think this race is, about 15 minutes before sending in my picks to you, I had this horse nowhere, and then I couldn't set my mind on this race, so I re-went through it and ended up having the horse go from nowhere to on top. I think this field is completely wide open. I think there's a ton of horses with a ton of question marks. Ultimately, the reason I ended up landing on Life's an Audible, this was one I talked myself off of last time, where I've been pretty spot on of when to use her and when not to. Just didn't love that Joe Bravo hopped aboard. No disrespect to him. It's just obviously a different game between him and Irad. And also was first off the layoff. That being said, now second time off the layoff, has a little more of a steady work tab, which I like, and picks up Johnny B. I know it's not Irad, but it's still a big upgrade from Joe Bravo. And honestly, I just think visually, when I went back and watched some of her efforts, I thought her closing kick was a little bit better, going a mile over a mile and a 16th. And obviously that might sound like such a minor difference for that little bit of a distance. But again, to me, visually, I see it. I also just think, has been running against much better than this field, has been in a lot of different graded stakes races, and now goes into an optional claimer and gets that much needed class relief. And I think the other thing that's a little bit sneaky is, the 2 efforts that Life's an Audible had, or sorry, not 2, the effort 2 back that Life's an Audible had, was able to get within 3 lengths on a pretty hot pace. And I know just missed against Pounce, but showed that ability to sit closer, whereas last time never really got into the race. They went slow. It kind of seemed like her race was over as soon as the race started. So I'm kind of just banking on her second time out, getting back to form and working out a nice trip and benefiting from the class relief.
Yeah, and I think she definitely needs the class relief. This is also second off a massive layoff for her into her 4-year-old year, which obviously fillies don't take as much in general, don't take as much step forward as colts from 3 to 4. However, they definitely can continue to mature. So I think Life's an Audible probably has a better chance, much better chance in here than she did last time. Just a matter of, again, she's going to get bet down. It's Pletcher, it's Rapoli, going to get bet down. And Irad's not aboard in this race. So I think that's definitely something to at least keep in mind, although I do think she's pretty good and definitely well spotted in this race. Just a matter of, can she get home? Also gets Lasix for the first time, if that is something that you follow. I'll show the time for them real quick, guys. They have this denoted as a very fast pace. 8 and the 12 are out in front, with the 2, 5, and my 6 just sitting the outside. I was hoping my horse was the 6 is going to sit somewhere 4th to 5th range and get first run on horses like Life's an Audible. But this is it for Marty Drexler. Again, 5 for 11. I was correct, and 7 for 11 in the money so far this meet. This is a horse that's been running up at Woodbine, which Marty Drexler likes to call home, of course, throughout the summer. Running some pretty good numbers, 85, 82. Of course, that last one wasn't the best, but this is not a horse that likes to be on the lead. This is a horse that likes to have a little bit of a target in front of her. And while I think this field's probably a little more tough than what she's been facing, I mean, there's no reason why she can't take to this 85. I know she's 6 and coming off another little bit of a layoff in this race, but this is one that this is one I'm more willing to trust versus others in this race. Again, it's very, very tough. There's so many different ways that you can go in this race. She should be a square price on the day. I'm hoping for somewhere in the middling 5, 6, 7 to 1 range. And she's going to get first jump, as I mentioned, on horses like Life's an Audible and others like Vivuv in this race. Or Viva, I don't know, dude. You know me.
You're good. I got it.
I
have to get it right.
You know what it is. If you're watching Bettin N Boozin, you know what it is. We don't pronounce horses' names correctly around here. But This is it. I think is going to be live, going to get first jump. Could trip out. Might not be the best horse necessarily in the race, as I mentioned before. But I think she might just trip out and get first run on a lot of others. Charlie, we both have the number 11 in here, Viv Verve. Jack Sisterson, not his best start to the meet. Gaffleon does hop back aboard, though, in this race. That last race, Tropical Park was never in question. Was outside in that race as well, going a mile and 16th, and was well back. 3 wide, as the notes say, never a menace. However, I mean, you go back, she has many, many races that will fit in this race. Just a matter of can she get back to those races.
Yeah, I was completely off her last time when we covered her, thankfully. And as a horse that I've talked about, besides that I can't stand her name, it's a horse that I've really always tried to play against. That being said, if I'm being realistic and unbiased, the horse likes it here at Gulfstream, always runs her race, has very consistent numbers like you touched on. Another one getting major class relief that's been in, variety of graded stakes. And it's just one where I think off of, pure ability when she is at her best or near her best certainly fits in this race. Over her career, again, is very consistently been in the money, is kind of a versatile horse. I think the time form is a little misleading because you can see in the past, like in that race she ran in New York, where even though it was a hot pace, she was only 2 lengths off the lead and finished third. So I don't think she has to sit at the back. I think she can kind of sit closer if they're going slow and sit further back if they're going fast. And last time just never got involved. But yeah, I think realistically, if you're playing the pick 5 or pick 6, for me, this is the leg I would go deepest in. I would honestly go 4 to 6 deep here. I'll let you talk on the 9 briefly, and honestly, I'll talk on the 9 a little bit too, because that was one I wanted to put in. And then obviously I'll finish up with my 5. But if you had anything else you want to add on Viv Verve also before you go.
No, and I think I picked her last time, so that obviously bodes well for me. But like I said, never in the race last time. This is a class relief as well after many 6 straight stakes races, so she should get a good run. But also, Charlie, I think the one thing to point out obviously is that it's a mile at Gulfstream. It's a very, very quick run to that first turn. But however, Viv should just drop right back. I mean, she's going to be flying from the back late, so really the post shouldn't be too much of an issue. It's just a matter of can she run back to those races that she ran in the summer last year. But Charlie, the number 9 is Hello Hollywood. This is another one that's coming off a little bit of a break from Brian Lynch to Christophe Clement, who's actually had another trainer that's had a very nice start to their Gulfstream Championship meet. One that has some numbers. If you go back to that, Keeneland Allowance ran an 82, which is the buyer top. And last time at Ellis, won just by a head, of course. Then it comes off the training from Brian Lynch. Christophe Clement's very good off layouts, so I have no question there. But I wanted to at least include this horse because, one, this horse could be ready, could be maturing. Not necessarily working the best, but Christophe usually doesn't work his horses very fast. Should be another one that's going to get a jump on a lot of the field. It's just a matter of can she put it together off the long layoff. One that I would include defensively, Oscar Performance. Obviously, we know how good he is with his turf runners. So, and Dylan Davis, which good. People argued whether it was a good move or not for him to leave New York and come to Florida for this championship meet. Obviously, he's taken to a flying colors. 22%. We've saying the praises of Dylan Davis on the show many, many times. So, they said nothing really to add there, but happy he's doing very well and he gets aboard in this horse that I think you definitely have to respect, Charlie, in this race. And obviously you can go into your 5 to end it.
Yeah, no, and I was going to say with Dylan Davis, one where I had gotten to see him at Gulfstream, and he was struggling a bit early on, but, like you mentioned, always being in New York, it was a risky move. It takes time to learn and adjust, especially, on those bigger days when you're running against guys like Irad and Tyler, who are already some of the best naturally, but have been riding at Gulfstream for years. I think Hello Hollywood is one, this was one I also was debating to put somewhere in the money. I just think is not going to be that square of a price necessarily. But I do think is one that, is lightly racing, is sitting on big performance. It's just a matter of if she needs one or not, but I would use her. Briefly, I'm actually going to quickly touch on the 8, and then I'll go into the 5. I think this is one to also look out for, just one that's lightly raced. That's really my main angle. Had 2 dirt races that were awful, switches to a nice optional claimer on the Tapeta and is able, to get on the lead, but they didn't go that fast, so I don't think she necessarily needs it. And you got to respect Pletcher, so I think that's another one you should use. And then I think you would agree with me. I think the 5 is by far the biggest wild card of this entire race. Obviously gets IRAD aboard for Christopher Davis, who hasn't sent too many here at Gulfstream, is 1 for 9.
Arlington legend.
But yeah, I would say Arlington legend, and in 2024 had a terrific year at 19%. Just again, doesn't typically send them to Gulfstream very often, but is working really well. Gets IRAD aboard. Certainly will be showing speed. This is one I just had to throw in somewhere because I just feel like that Christopher Davis wouldn't throw this one in here if he didn't think she could take to the turf at all. And more importantly, I don't think IRAD would hop on this one where he could go to Life's an Audible or someone else in this race, like the other Pletcher I just touched on, if he didn't think this one could do any running on the turf. So I think this is the biggest question. It's certainly one that would take money, and I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole vertically, but I would absolutely use defensively on my horizontal tickets.
It's funny you mentioned that. Obviously, like I said, Chris Davis is very good trainer to come out of the Midwest, and obviously a guy I've talked to a lot over at Arlington. This horse, this horse really doesn't. There's no turf running at all, really, in any of the siblings. Go to the family tree again, not a sponsor, never a sponsor, but DRF formulator, fantastic. You can do all this stuff with DRF formulator, and I really can't use anything else at this point. There's just really no turf at all. And Munnings, I can go to Munnings stats as well. Munnings doesn't necessarily do well with his turf runners either. You could see 10% versus 16 and 18% on the dirt. So it's an interesting move for sure. Obviously IRAD's aboard, so you would just expect this horse to be live. And this horse has run fantastic numbers, especially that last race in the Rampart. Just the turf angle is really interesting for this horse. And you can see both runs on synthetic. Obviously, first two runs for this horse. So take it with a grain of salt, but just no turf breeding at all. And this race is definitely a spread, I think, for both of us. I'm going 6-11-9. Charlie's going 1-11-5 in race number 8. We'll pick up the pace a little bit, guys. We are running a little bit behind, but of course, we want to give you guys the best information we can. In the next race in the sequence is the co-feature on the day. It's the Sunshine Sprint Stakes, going 6 furlongs for Florida bred 4-year-old and upward, as I show the field of 8 for the Sunshine Sprint Stakes, headed by the returning Damon's Mound, which I think is actually a very interesting move for this horse. Junior Alvarado and Bill Mott. The number 3 Comedy Town for Drayden Van Dyke and Saffie Joseph Jr. Of course, you have the number 1 Classify, Irad Ortiz and Saffie Joseph Jr. as well. Most likely morning line favorite as well, with the number 1, at least in my opinion. And I'll show the right now. You are going with the number 1 Classify. I actually went with the other Saffie. I went with the number 3 Comedy Town in this race, the older, more experienced runner, if you will. Charlie, moving into you, of course, I'll let you go first. What did you like most about the number 1 Classify? And I'll actually bring up the time form for this race, because I think this one, the pace scenario is more necessary than ever, really, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, I think there is a certainly good amount of I actually disagree a little bit with the time form. I wouldn't say it's quite that slow, to be honest with you. I actually think there are a decent amount of horses that have shown some speed. That being said, I just think Classify, absolutely loves it here at Gulfstream. A very consistent horse, 10 out of 13 career starts, or first or second for this one. Was really impressive last time out, running against Born Noble, who, man, I don't know what happened to that horse. But, ran huge in that effort, popped a 97 off of, a bit of a layoff. But yeah, this was a horse who, looked to be potentially on the Derby trail and was a freak on debut, and then just, oh man, it's sad what happened to that horse. But yeah, Classify just really makes sense to me, fits the bill, gets IRAD aboard. Obviously, with it being C2 Racing Stable, IRAD Saffie is going to get bet down. Is also, been working well, which I like. And I just think this one can save all the ground and sort of sit, and has the, tactical ability where if they don't go fast enough and the 7 starts to look a little loose, I think IRAD will make Classify get on with it. But honestly, I just can't see the 7 getting loose, because I know the 1 and 3 are going to be the main Saffies that people talk about. But Mish is in this race too, who's not slow either. And I just feel like with Saffie having 3 in this race, he's certainly going to make at least 1, or if not 2 of them send, to try to help ensure he gets 1 of his 3 home in this race.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you by any means. And I think I might be overlooking, because obviously Drayden Van Dyke is on this horse. Probably third call. However, he has ran the horse the last 3 times in this race. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Damon's Mound is just really just faster than a lot of these horses. You could see, 22, 21, but he's definitely, I don't think he's going to be loose either, but I do think it's going to at least be one of the horses. I think it's one of the four, really. Maybe one of the three. I don't know if Mish is necessarily good enough to win in this spot. Maybe used to be, not necessarily anymore. But I mean, Classify, look, I have her in third, or have him in third, excuse me. Definitely have to respect him, and coming off a buyer top last time, an optional claimer, definitely a little bit of a different beast here. I would think definitely different horses, but Classify, obviously IRAD hops aboard, so you have to respect that. I went with the number 3 Comedy Town. I think this horse is actually, I mean, really, even though this horse is 7 now, I think he's as good as he's ever been, really. I mean, coming out of the Edward Pliza barn and Michael Maselli, who ran him at, in New York and Pennsylvania, never really got kicked in. It comes to Saffy, something clicked, and now this horse is running, 90s and on the dirt, which this horse has really never been on the dirt. Obviously, what the horse wants to do. Ran well in the Phoenix behind Federal, tried to keep up with Federal Judge, just couldn't. And to be honest, man, there's no federal judges in this race. I mean, you got to respect Damon's Mound. You got to respect Classify, but they are no federal judge. Nakatomi as well, who just passed him at the wire for second in that race. I really, and Howard coming with teacher jokes in the chat, but there's always one every single time. Comedy Town's no laughing matter. Comedy Town is no joke. How about that for you? A little bit, and of course, always one of the teacher jokes for you guys. But Comedy Town, I just think he's as good as he's ever been. And if he's going to sit right off the speed with, with Classify or something like that, he's faced the better company. I just feel like Comedy Town could just get a really nice trip. And I think, like I said, even though Drayden Van Dyke's on this horse comparatively to Gaffleon or Ortiz, ridden him the last 3 times and has obviously done very well with him. It is a different beast in this race, but that Phoenix actually, I think, was pretty good. Now coming back to Gulfstream, 3 for 3 at Gulfstream, 4 for 4 in the money at the distance. I actually really like Comedy Town in this race and think he can get a really nice trip. The only other horse, again, I'll go to Damon's Mound. We didn't give him too much of credit. Very, very quick. Off of Michelle Lovell into Bill Mott's barn, which I think is really interesting, Charlie. This horse is very fast, but as you mentioned, 3 Saffies in this race that have early speed. You'd assume that at least one of them is going to be near the lead or on the lead. Honestly, I'd assume it's Classified just because breaking from the rail. Maybe Mish from the inside could show some speed, keep Damon's Mound a little bit outside. Obviously, there's a ton of taxis you can do with 3 horses in the race, but Damon's Mound is one you have to respect and has run very, very big races in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, certainly has numbers that fit, has ran against nice horses as well, running against Speedboat Beach and Hijazi coming out of, a grade 1 and San Antonio. Obviously, the big concern is over a year layoff. I would also say, the works, I understand at pace, and obviously they don't go quite as fast, but nothing that exactly jumps out to get you excited. Like, wow, this horse is working very forwardly. I think certainly can make sense. I don't know if this is going to be some sort of bold take, because I've seen people in the chat really like this horse that comes back to bite me. But to be honest, if I were playing horizontal tickets in this race, I would just go 1-3 and forget it and move on. I think they're at this stage of their career class above. The only reason I didn't end up having Comedy Town on top, and I do agree with a lot of what you said, Kyle, my main 2 concerns were just age and the layoff. Obviously nowhere near as big of a layoff, but still hasn't been seen since October and is 7 now. But I think it is between those 2, and I think it's just going to be tough sledding for Damon's Mound. Has to deal with the layoff. And also the other concern that I think has to be pointed out is Mish is also owned by C2 Racing Stable. Yep. We saw what happened the last time they had 2 of the featured horses, 2 back when this horse was going against White Abario, and did absolutely no running in that race. I understand Tyler's aboard, but Mish is 8. And I think the other big concern that could impact the race is that Mish, as you mentioned, is right next to Damon's Mound. And so I have a feeling whatever Damon's Mound does, Saffy's going to have instructions to try to have Mish make Damon's Mound life as tough as possible and try to set up his 2 horses to the inside to save the ground and have the easier trip, which is even more so a reason for me to think this is just 1-3. I think, like you said, Damon's Mound certainly has the numbers. I think you could argue is the class of the field. The question is just going to be the massive layoff and having to work against the Saffy trio.
Yeah, I think it's definitely tough sledding, and you have to overcome a year layoff. But I'll tell you what, Troy, there is nobody better at doing it than Mr. Bill Mott himself. So definitely not completely throw out. You have to respect the horse, but again, should be bet down at least one of the favorites. I probably assume Classify is going to be the favorite coming into this race, and Comedy Town and Damon's Mound are going to be fighting for second and third choice. But and there's one thing that Mr. Paul Halloran, of course, always says is that when you lose to Billy Mott, obviously this isn't the Boys in Blue, but when you lose to Billy Mott, you're going to be questioning yourself on how you didn't have that horse in there. So definitely have to respect Damon's Mound, but again, lots of trouble to overcome, I think, in this race at what's going to be a lower price. I'm going 371. Charlie's going 137 in the co-feature Sunshine Sprint. Charlie, we have two more races to cover in this one, but I want to give a quick shout out to my good friend Nathan Woodward, we sat together at the Indiana Derby. Me and my father sat together with them. We had a fantastic day out there, and obviously a very regular viewer of the podcast. Says B&B signs look so damn good on the wall. I'm glad it's getting more legible. It's very, very bright, but and obviously looks a little bit better in person. But yeah, I'm very happy with how it came out. And obviously, shout out to my mom for getting to me for Christmas. So thanks a lot, Nathan. Greatly appreciate the kind words. Charlie, let's move on to race number 10 here. It's an optional claimer, 25,000 M1X going 6 furlongs on the dirt. Draws a field of 10. I'll show the Equibase right now. Morning line favorite. It's probably between 3 horses. Number 6, Cruz de Catalina, the New York bred, Junior Alvarado and Riley Mott. Our Disaster, the Florida bred Gaffleone and Safi Joseph, and number 10, Wailua for Edgard Zayas and Safi Joseph. And I'll pop up our picks right now. And we do think it's one of those 3 horses, 3-horse race in both of our opinions. I'm going with the 10, Wailua. However, Charlie's going with the other Safi, going with the number 9, Our Disaster. And Charlie, I'll tell you what, I actually had this horse on top for a long while. Changed it when I went back through it. They have it as a fast pace, Charlie, I will say. However, they do have the 9 clear on the front end, according to Timeform US.
Yeah, I think, as someone who's normally the closer guy and, has gotten frustrated at times at Gulfstream because of how much it plays towards speed, I honestly just think this 9 is going to get loose. I completely agree with what you're saying in terms of that, there still is pace and it is hot. But, I mean, you look at the quarters that have been set with this horse, for example, and you can see, I mean, even at going 7 furlongs was doing almost 22 flat. You see in the 2 times this horse has gone 6 furlongs, went 21 and change both times. And in both those races, I mean, you see red numbers anywhere and it hasn't bothered this horse at all. She doesn't just win on the lead. And this is the big thing for me because, my biggest pet peeve is speed horses that quit. She doesn't just win on the lead. She wins going away on the lead while setting hot fractions. And last time out, lost to the heavy favorite Nick Style, who, if you can pull up for a moment, I believe has been, if I'm remembering correctly, in some pretty nice form. So certainly not a horse to, you can see with these numbers. I would say those aren't bad numbers, in my opinion. I actually find enough Bill Mott horse. But I think Our Disaster has, ran against a really tough horse last time out. Outside of that, when running against horses at this level, has just completely dominated and gotten it done time and time again. I would agree, though. I still think it is a 3-horse race and that, this 10 and 6, along with the 9, are cut above the field. I just think this 9 might be a tier above the 6 and 10. I'll let you talk back and what you think is different. I get the numbers show differently. It would argue that those 3 are pretty much on level terms. The horse is also working pretty lights out with 35 for 3 furlongs and 47 and change for 4. Yep. I just think there's a lot to like. Tyler G getting the call as well. I think this one is very tough.
I'll tell you what, I agree on the fact that I think she's very fast. And like I said, I had her on top, and I think I have to respect her. Also 5 for 5 in the top 2 in all her 5 races. But I don't see her getting fully loose. I mean, the one on the inside, granted, maybe not as fast, but what's this horse going to do? This horse, she sat once maybe by a length, but this horse can't pass anybody. What's she going to do from the inside? The number 3, Julie's Legacy for Rohan Crichton. What's this horse? What's Irad going to do on this horse? I mean, this horse hasn't passed the soul since May of last year. And then you got Done Enough for Ken Sweezy and Jorge Ruiz. This horse doesn't pass a soul either. What's this horse going to do? So, personal choice. What's this horse going to do? It's just, even though the 9 might just be faster, and Cruz to Catalina Cruiser, Cruz to Catalina is not slow either. I don't see her getting that loose in this race to warrant, and she's ran very well with hot paces before. I just think also, Charlie, the other thing I don't like about Our Disaster in this race is that she's coming from State Bred Company, into what is open company again. And obviously, she could take that form. The numbers speak for themselves, right? But coming from state bred company to open company in an optional claiming space is definitely a step up in class, at least in general. Working very well, has the numbers, but I just don't see her getting loose in this race, even though time form does have her loose. There's just too many horses in this race that they can't win, realistically speaking, unless they go for that lead. So our disaster, again, I have her in second. I have to completely respect her in this race, but I went to Wailua, and I actually have a very strong opinion on Wailua. That last race at Keeneland, they went 22-3 for 6.5. However, they went a 24-second second quarter, which really never happened in the fall meet at Keeneland. That track was playing very, very front end heavy, and she just absolutely blew the doors off that field. I'm not saying it's the best field by any means. Coming off that last race at Keeneland, you can go next buyer figure out. Not a whole lot of improvement necessarily. Little Jen in class came back to run second at Churchill and then second at Churchill again, sprinting. So again, maybe not the best competition, but the way she did it was just so easy. Obviously, Flavian Pratt is still in roaring form to this day. I think this horse is going to be able to sit somewhere mid-pack. And even though you have wanted to be a little bit closer at Gulfstream Park, Edgard Zayas, who has actually been riding fantastic with all the jockey competition coming into town, as they always do in the winter at Gulfstream, I think Wailua makes a whole ton of sense in this race. And if you can sit mid-pack, if they're going to battle each other out front, I think this is your one to take advantage of that hot pace. And I think actually they didn't work together. I noticed they both worked 47, but Wailua has been working over at Palm Meadows, and that 47-2 is a very, very fast time for Palm Meadows. So this horse looks to be sitting on go here for Safi and Edgard Zayas, of course, out of the Ramsey barn. Should take advantage of what looks to be a hot pace. So definitely looking towards Wailua and have a pretty strong opinion coming into this one. Last horse to talk about, Charlie, I'll let you finish it up. Cruz to Catalina, Riley Mott. Another one coming from state bred. However, this one is New York bred coming into open company for the first time. Numbers make a ton of sense. Again, just going to have to work out a trip from what looks like to be a pretty decent amount of pace.
Yeah, I think the two question marks that are going to be interesting here are, again, one, the layoff, and then two, as you kind of touched on, not only the state breds, but also if you look in these last two races where she was a lot more forwardly placed, it was going longer with slower fractions naturally, because you're not going to go the same fractions for 6.5 and 7 as you will at a true sprint at 6. So I think what's going to be really interesting is I have a feeling that realistically, Junior Alvarado, I mean, obviously this horse is working well, just had a 47 flat at Palm Meadows, but I think the only way to victory for both the 6 and the 10 is to try to just sit off this red hot pace. I completely hear what you're saying, and I do see a lot of horses that are going to have to send. It's just the more I keep looking at who they ran against and what their fractions are, I just don't know if they're fast enough to make it matter. My gut feeling is because I saw what you said about the 10 as well, I just think the 10 has a much stronger kick than the 6, and ultimately I think they're going to try to sit and try to get there in time. I'm just not sure they will. And I think Tyler G will be smart and just let this horse naturally get towards the front. And if some of these others do try to set ridiculous fractions, then I think he'll sit directly off and be right behind. I just think the question is, can the 10 and 6 stay close enough to actually get to this 9? But I do think it is a 3-horse race.
No, and I completely agree with you. It's just a matter of, like I said, there's only one way to win, I think, for a lot of these horses. And if they don't go, look, we've seen it many, many times before. If they don't go, I don't know what to say. And maybe they're trying something, maybe they're rating, which they can do in this optional claimer, but really it only seems like there's a certain amount of places to win for a lot of these horses. I'm going 10-9-6 in race 10 at Gulfstream Park. Charlie's going 9-10-6. Of course, guys, one more race to go, but we just crossed the hour mark. So thank you guys all for watching. If you guys are enjoying what you're watching on YouTube or on X, please, if you're watching X, come over to YouTube, give the video a like, and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more videos of ours, any more podcasts. Sorry, apologies, but they do obviously come out as videos. If you hit the like button, it's completely free to do, and it just shows us that you guys are really enjoying the content we're putting out. So would greatly appreciate it. Again, it's the best way to help out our channel. Charlie, this last race is also pretty decently hard. It's 3-year-olds main special weight going a mile and 16th on the turf to close out the late pick 5 and of course the pick 6 that we're covering. Full field of 12, 4 also eligibles. Again, just the whole 9 yards for this race. Morning line favorite. You freaking guess yourself. I got nothing for you. However, we have the same 3 horses again. You were going with the number 11, King of Ashes, which is a horse that I'm actually interested in a lot and actually threw in there just late. We both have number 12, Constitution Road, in second. I'm going with the number 7, Golden Channel, for Dylan Davis, who you have in third. Charlie, of course, I'll let you talk first. Number 11, King of Ashes, is a horse for Brendan Walsh and Gaff Leone, who team up a lot, who actually ran very well last time. Just couldn't necessarily get the job done on Captain Jin on the Tapeta. Now he looks to try the turf for the first time.
Yeah, and I love King of Ashes. I actually slightly disagree when you were saying to guess who the morning line is. It's actually part of the reason why I have such a strong opinion and love this race. I think Constitution Road on the outside. Yes. I mean, people are going to see a $300,000 tag, 1 start with Chad Brown and Irad. I'm guessing this horse is going to be somewhere around 7 to 5 or less. Honestly, I think how we talked about spread races earlier, I think if you're trying to hit big on this ticket, I think this last race is your opportunity. I think you just have to either say I know I have this 12 in second, because when we're giving our picks out, it's vertically, not horizontally. But to be honest with you, I think this 12 is incredibly beatable, and my big horizontal stance to try to make some money in this ticket would be to try to beat this 12. I love King of Ashes, as you touched on. These 2 pair up again, is working well. Was actually a horse that I liked on debut and lost a Howard's Derby horse and Uncle Jim, and was a massive price, but then came back and just missed last time. Ran against No More War, who's a horse that I love, but got one of the worst rides ever and just missed in devastating fashion to cost me a ton of money. But the focus here is King of Ashes. As you mentioned, made the switch from dirt. I know obviously synthetic is not turf, but it's a lot closer than dirt is working well in the turf. This duo works well together. And I just thought it was honestly a super impressive performance, because when I was watching this race, I thought King of Ashes had no chance. I know they went decently fast at the quarter, but then slowed down to a more reasonable tempo, was way out of the race. And then all of a sudden was just flying late and just missed on others who got the jump here. Now, third time out, second time on the non-dirt surface, actually getting onto the turf, which I think is what Brandon Walsh thinks this horse wants. And honestly, when I first looked at this horse, thought turf could certainly be an opportunity. I mean, you see the Irish breeding on the sire. This duel links back up again, and I think you'll get a pretty square price on this horse. I know it's Walsh and Gaff Leone, but I'm guessing you're getting at least 4, 5, 6 to 1, and this is one that I would definitely look to press pretty high up on my horizontals to try to make this ticket pay.
That's about what I was thinking on the price as well, somewhere middling, something like that. Street Sense actually doesn't do that well with turf runners. However, has had some very good ones, of course, in the past. That last race definitely makes me think that this horse is more inclined to run on turf. Obviously, Brendan Walsh has been working this horse on the turf, and that 1:03, while 10 out of 16 still is a pretty serious work getting ready for this spot. King of Ashes, I think, is definitely one that you need to include come post time. We'll talk about Constitution Road real quick, as we're, again, running out of time here. Constitution Road, again, makes a whole ton of sense. Ran at Aqueduct, ran a good race with Pratt aboard, just missed to a high beta. But Chad Brown, we all know this, guys. He does not bring his best stock to Gulfstream Park. You can see when you see Chad Brown 2 for 30 on the meet, 7%, granted, 16 out of 30 in the money. So these are always ones you might, maybe play someone over in an exacta or something like that. But this horse is going to be favored. I do agree with you, Charlie. I completely forgot this horse, but really Spendthrift Farm. Obviously, this horse is well meant. It's just a matter of, Chad Brown doesn't bring his best horses here in the winter. He usually runs his best race horses over at Tampa Bay Downs. Has been gravitating more to Gulfstream as they've been redoing the turf course. But the numbers speak for themselves, guys. Chad Brown never is 2 for 30 in these types of meets. And to see this horse show up here with the 12 hole, might I add, which is a hard post to come from. They have a little bit more run up, as this is a mile and a 16th, but the 12th post is still no joke. So Constitution Road, while again, have to respect it, but definitely looking to play against in this race. And I actually went a little bit off the rail, and I'm glad you have this horse in there, Charlie. Golden Channel is a horse that I'm going with on top that I thought was a little bit of a wild card. And George Weaver, you can go here. Days between starts, you can see first-time starters is actually only 15%, 32 for 220 in the last 5 years. However, you narrow it down to Gulfstream, and he's all of a sudden, now he's up to 20%. He's 13 for 65. So George Weaver does run well first time out at Gulfstream. Medagliadoro mare, the distance should be absolutely no issue at all. Out of English Channel, we know how well his turf horses run. You can see 14% on the turf routes compared to 12% and 9% on the dirt and routes and sprints, respectively. But I just think this horse is definitely could sit on a really nice one. And like I said, George Weaver does win first time out. Definitely one I think you have to include on horizontals. However, obviously, if we know how hard it is to win first time out, 12 horse field. If this horse, you have to look at the board if you're playing vertically. If this horse is taking money, I'm assuming this horse is going to be somewhere around 8-1 morning line. If this horse is taking money down to those middling 4, 5, 6-1 prices, definitely one to look at. Obviously, if you're playing pick 5s, pick 6, you obviously don't have that luxury, as this is the last race in the late pick 5 or the pick 6. Just a matter of if he's taking money, definitely going to be live in this spot. I will definitely be looking at the board in this last race. And unfortunately, like I said, we're running out of time, but there's so many others in this race, that also have a chance in this one. Dia Romano ran a decent race last time out for Melanie Giddings at Gulfstream Park. Going to get a little bit extra, however, is going to be a big price. I mean, you keep going through the field. Spirit of the Law for Barclay Tag, Saratoga Stable, Joe Bravo ran a really nice one on Tapeta last time out. Looks to take a step forward off of that effort and has been working pretty good on the turf over at Palm Meadows. War and Majesty for Dale Romans is one who's run some pretty decent numbers that fit. You have Todd Pletcher, Abundance going to try turf for the first time. More than ready quality road. Some very nice horses in this race. It's just a matter of which one could put it together, of course, at the right time. And this, Charlie, I think out of the other 3 in the late pick 5, I think this one, like you said, you can stand on business, if you will, and throw out the 12. But I think there's definitely a lot of different horses you can include to close out the late pick 5 and pick 6 in this one.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The only thing I was going to say, if you could actually pull up the PPs real quick, there is some also eligibles for this race, which I do think is important just because this race is open. Yep. I agree with everything you said on the 7. The other thing I was going to touch on is I think it's important that Dylan Davis is aboard.
Yep.
Because as you mentioned, he's at a strong meet. But the horse who, funny enough with the name, I was about to say excites me, is Excite. That's the one horse on the list that I'm really intrigued in if this horse is to get in. It's a Bill Mott horse with Alvarado. Obviously, that duo is really good together, is also working really well at Payson. I mean, to work 48 and 4 at Payson is a serious work. Obviously I know went off at 23-1, which you pretty much never see for a Bill Mott horse, but close from the clouds. And I remember because I was at this race, and again, that was the race where I had No More War and was devastated. But I remembered when I watched that race, I immediately was like, damn, I'm pissed I lost. And I was like, who was that horse that closed up to get like 3rd or 4th? Because that horse was from nowhere. That was Excite. And again, like I said, is working well, has the connection. So if the horse that Alvarado's, I think you said was War and Majesty, if that horse scratches and Excite scratches in, I think this is one you certainly also have to look at.
Not to mention, I mean, if you've been around racing for a while, you know who Elate is. Elate was a fantastic runner. This is, I think, how many progeny has she had now? I think this is it's only her 2nd one, and Bill Mott has had the other one. And actually tried her on the turf and ran better numbers, however, just never got her feet going. Speightstown, I mean, look, she can definitely run in here. It's going to take a lot to scratch out. Obviously, she has 2 also eligibles to also jump in front of as well. So makes a ton of sense. Just a matter of who gets in and who's taking money. But I think Charlie and I are both in the realm of you got to respect the most likely morning line favorite in number 12 Constitution Road. However, definitely ways you can go, I think, to beat him in this race. I'm going 7, 12, 11. Charlie's going 11, 12, 7 to end off the pick 6 at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. Charlie, your best bets are on the screen right now. Going with a double 1-3 into the 9. That is our Disaster, who you're singling in that race. And you mentioned in the Sunshine Sprint how you think it is the 2 horses of Classify and Comedy Town, to see which one, which it's one of the 2 horses in that race that should set off what looks to be a pretty decent pace. And as you talked about, you love King of Ashes, race 11, winning the number 11 King of Ashes.
Yeah, again, I just think it's ultimately between those two Safis. I know there's also Mish, but I think personally Mish is the one that has the least upside. And then again, we talked about the 7. Ultimately, I'm just concerned about the layoff, and I just think again these two Safis are just a class above and have shown good recent form. And then again, going into our disaster, I acknowledge that there's other pace. I acknowledge that there's bombs that have to send. I just think again this one is a class above the field, and I think A will probably just be naturally fast enough that even if the horse isn't loose, won't have to work hard to go and win from the lead. And B, if they do try to set just outrageously fast fractions, even for our disaster standards, I think Tyler will be wise enough to know to then just let the cheap speed go and then go by. I think the 6 and 10 are talented. It's just going to be, can they get there in time? And I don't think they will. At 7, it'd be a different story, not 6. And then King of Ashes, again, I think that is, as you mentioned, a pretty open race. But I think King of Ashes has as much upside as any horse in this field. Looked really solid in the first start that was off the dirt. And again, I just think it's a race where you have to try to beat that 12 horse, and I think King of Ashes can do it.
Look, completely agree with you on that front, of course. Good, Charlie. Good luck with your best bets. My best bets, I kind of tipped my hand a little bit earlier. Win on the number 7 in race 7 sneak preview. I mentioned that one of those horses in there, Stucky, who Charlie liked on top, is going to be a pretty heavy morning line favorite. You have the ultimate equipment change, second time off of the very long layoff for Jose D'Angelo. Gaff Leone gets aboard, working very well. Gold Square LLC. Tons and tons of things to like in this one. Arrowgate, 350,000. Tis Wonderful Mare. Distance should be no issue. Extra distance should be no issue. Love sneak preview to beat what looks to be a pretty heavy morning line favorite in the number 1 with Stucky with the number 7 sneak preview in race number 7. In race number 9, guys, I talked about it. Win on the number 3, Comedy Town. I really, really like Comedy Town in that spot. And even though he's 7, I think he's as good as he's ever been and should just get a really nice trip sitting off the speed. However, Charlie, I do respect your number 1 Classify. And if I were to take, I would play not necessarily a backup double, but a bet along with my win bet on Comedy Town, a double 1-3 into the 10 in race number 9, which we talked about that at length. Actually, in race number 10, excuse me, in the optional claimer where you have our disaster and think there's not, that might just be faster, which he might as well be, or she might as well be, excuse me. But Wailua, I think, could just really get a really, really nice trip in that spot and trip out in that race. So win on number 3, Comedy Town in race number 9, and starting a double in race number 9, going 1-3 to include Charlie's number 1 Classify into my top pick, who I have a pretty strong opinion about, in number 10, Wailua in race number 10. Guys, thank you guys all so much for watching. This is it's been another edition of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. Again, of course, we could not do it without you guys. Our viewership the last three podcasts we've done have almost been at or over 1,000 views. Again, thank you guys all so much for all the support you guys have shown. And again, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. You can also hit the notification bell to not miss any other podcasts here on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel. Watch all our shows from earlier this week, including Horsin Around and Pacific Horseplayers. And tune in tomorrow at Picks and Ponies, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about Fairgrounds and their late pick 5. Also, fun fact, I will be on the Sport of Kings podcast on Friday, dropping Friday night at sportofkings.com, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Come watch me as well as Scott Carson and Chris, Hall of Fame handicapper Chris Larmy, break down the late pick 5 at Fairgrounds as well. So, but of course, for my co-host, Charlie Freeman, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 115 on Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the Gulfstream Park, January 18th, pick 6, including a bunch more Sunshine Stakes to boot. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.